Sharon Long has her second Emmy nomination for The Great after a win for the show last year. Other projects have included Metropolis, The Silent Storm, Calm with Horses, and County Lines. Sharon, congratulations on your nomination. You're coming into season 3 after the great success of the first 2 seasons, and obviously season 2 as well. You won an Emmy for it. I guess, how did you think about your approach to the show with regard to maybe balancing with what worked before with also trying new stuff, I would hope, right? Or imagine.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we had a kind of advantage in the change that was Catherine's character, because she wasn't pregnant. So that, and she became a mother, and she was in love and running a country. So there was kind of already a sort of inbuilt change there, which is I think is really helpful. I mean, the way that the program works is that you get sort of 2 scripts at a time as a block. So you can't kind of project the whole 10 episodes. You can only sort of start working on the 2 that you have, which you know, at the very beginning, she's kind of, you know, because she's in love, there's a sort of I felt that we could introduce a lot more pattern and warmth, and she's a little bit more kind of decorative, really. And all the characters had to sort of still maintain their characters, really. So, you know, aside from new people coming in, we're just going, I'm taking the costumes on a journey with the characters as the scripts come in, and we find out what's going to happen.
Do you try to, like, when, like you're saying, like when you're doing stuff like you're like with Catherine, and like able to maybe use different patterns or different stuff than you were previously, and certainly, like you said, like not being pregnant again, it certainly gives you more options, I would imagine, right, for season 3. Then do you also do you have to like match, or do you kind of like have the surrounding people complement her out, like wardrobe, or you kind of like don't think about that at all?
I think about them all being in the set at the same time. I do think about the juxtaposition of the costumes, because I think sometimes certain colours don't really work together very well, and are a bit jarring on the eye, unless you want them to jar. You know, it all depends on what's happening in the scene and the friction. I mean, obviously, because it's a very organic show, and things are being written all the time. Occasionally there's times where I'm not in control of the characters have been brought into a scene that weren't going to be in the scene, and so it sort of changes the palette slightly. But at all times I'm thinking of all the characters at the same time, and where they kind of cross each other's paths.
Yeah. So with, what is your, I guess, how is your collaboration with Elle, and kind of like certainly thinking of Catherine, like you said, like going through different things this season compared to last, like, do you, even though you're getting the scripts like 2 at a time, like you said, are you sitting with her maybe, or do you talk to her like just broadly about like her feelings on like what's happening with Catherine, or like kind of how do you?
I do, and I often, sometimes I get the scripts before she does.
Okay.
Which means I kind of have a sort of, if I'm fitting something that she knows about and we're discussing that, and then I'll bring in fabrics without being able to tell her what they're for, to see if she likes them. So at least I know whether I've got a chance of sort of, because the lead time for a dress is, you know, at least a week. You can't make one in less than a week. And obviously, because the workrooms are working on different things at the same time, it's more like a 2-week sort of process from beginning to end, as the dress passes through different hands and different processes. And the same with the menswear. It's all kind of the same. If you were just working on the one thing, it's kind of 5 days for a woman's costume, maybe 4 for a man's. So if I can sort of have a conversation about fabrics and whether they're liked is the very, very first thing that we do, so that then those fabrics are sort of put on one side, and come into play later on when they feel appropriate for the script that's come in. And then in Elle's case, and all the other actors, actually, we have a kind of conversation about what's happening and what they feel about it and what that might mean to the character. I mean, I think when you've got period, because obviously contemporary, it's much easier to change things. With period costume, you've got to sort of a set of structures that have got to stay in place, otherwise you're out of the period. So you can only change things so far, you know. It's sometimes it's quite small, it's whether the skirts get bigger or smaller, or they're more decorative, or the necklines go higher or lower. If with the men, it's sometimes how they wear their clothes and not what they're wearing or what we've made for them. It's whether they've got completely dressed or it's just going to be a shirt and breeches. And you know, there's lots of conversations like that. I think with Gwilym and Nick, it was often a kind of how they were wearing, whether they're going to wear the jacket. If they got the wig on, then they usually were completely fully dressed with a, you know, their sort of neckties, and everything was perfect. If the wig comes off, then it's much freer. And what do you take away, and what are they going to do in that day, and how do you ever get the jacket back on them, or the waistcoat or whatever? Yeah, it's the sort of it's like they've got mini wardrobes, really.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. Do you have, like, for this season, was there a outfit either for Catherine or for Nick that you were like, I don't know, that was incredibly complex or complicated? You were like, oh, I'm very glad that we were able to pull this off, and like it kind of, all the work we put into it was worth it, I guess.
I think there's a few.
I'm sure there are.
No, I think there's a few. There was the there's a kind of big sort of meeting of the peoples of Russia, the Nakaz, where Catherine the Great is sort of we're trying to lay down some kind of new rules and laws, not always successfully, but there was a fabric designed for the dress that she wears for that, which is a sort of riff really on a French toile de jouet, and the pattern was designed with all sorts of little elements of the Great and a kind of little Russian vignettes all over it. So that was kind of the work, and it was printed the sort of, I think, with 10 days to spare, because the whole process of printing it was really complicated. Believe it or not, the red ink was bleeding. The kind of the makers couldn't make it if it wasn't doing the right things if it wasn't in silk. And it's much easier to we were digitally printing. It's much easier to do that in synthetics, but it wouldn't work. And the dress wasn't working. So that was a bit of a nail biting moment.
Yeah, I love that so much. I guess, like, we have to wrap up, but I had one more thing. I just want the show is obviously so funny and like arch, I would say. I don't know, I guess, how do your costumes, I guess, complement, or do you think about like how they complement the tone of the show, or do you not, like, is it divorced from that, I guess? Like, do you ever think of that?
No, I do think of that. I think obviously if it wasn't a satire and wasn't a comedy, the costumes would be different.
Okay.
There is a world created there that allows the costumes to be the way they are, really. You know, they're not always comedic, but there's some light-hearted, sort of whimsical elements that wouldn't be there probably if I was doing a historically correct show.
Yeah, you definitely have a lot more leeway.
Historically correct.
Yeah.
Yes,
no, yeah.
They are the Greats version of 18th century.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sharon Long, obviously an Emmy nominee this year, an Emmy winner last year for The Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.